I used to believe that if I kept the peace, stayed quiet, and never asked for too much, my family would finally love me the way I needed. But silence didn't bring closeness. It only made me invisible. What happened next shattered every illusion I had about loyalty, love, and blood. Let me tell you what really happened. My name is Rachel Whitman. I'm 35 years old and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A desert city painted with adobe walls, distant mountain silhouettes, and the kind of quiet that makes you think twice before speaking. I'm the lead creative strategist for a digital agency that builds brand identities for wellness and lifestyle companies. It's the kind of job that requires both vision and precision. Two things I've always brought into every corner of my life. After nearly 6 years together, Ethan Marshall and I just got engaged. He's a landscape photographer. Observant, grounded, and gentle in ways I didn't know how much I needed until I met him. We crossed paths at a photography exhibit. He was one of the featured artists. I was attending for a client, secretly hoping the art would move me more than the marketing pitch I was expected to sit through. He caught me studying one of his pieces, a black and white image of a tree clinging to a cliff. We spoke. He laughed. I laughed. And something shifted. Our wedding is planned for late April, in a quiet olive grove just outside Taos. Nothing grand. Just sunlight, wildflowers, and a circle of people who've seen us grow into something steady and real. My family still lives in Albuquerque, about a 2-hour drive south. My mother, Carol, used to teach high school literature. She's sharp, opinionated, and famously controlling, especially when it comes to appearances. My father, Dennis, has always been more withdrawn. A kind man, but someone who avoids friction the way a desert avoids rain. And then there's my younger sister, Lily, 4 years my junior. She was always the dazzling one, our mother's pride and joy. She got accepted to a conservatory in Los Angeles but left after barely a year. Since then it's been a blur of failed boutiques, pyramid schemes, and social media ventures that fizzled before they found an audience. We were never close. I was the responsible one, the one who stayed up late making vision boards, organizing tax folders, and setting monthly savings goals. Lily floated through life assuming the world would catch her, and somehow my mother always made sure it did. No matter what chaos Lily created, it was quietly handled, erased, and forgotten, while I was reminded to be the bigger person. So when Ethan and I hosted our engagement dinner, I kept my expectations low. All I really wanted was a calm evening. One night where the noise of old patterns didn't overshadow something beautiful. A chance to mark the beginning of our next chapter, surrounded by the people who meant the most to us. We chose a small restaurant nestled in Santa Fe's historic district. The walls were lined with paintings from local artists, and copper lanterns cast a warm glow over linen-covered tables. Ethan reached for my hand as we stepped in, his calm presence grounding me in the moment. Guests were already seated, my coworkers, his hiking friends, a few of our old classmates. At one table I spotted my parents. My mother was adjusting the table setting like she was prepping for a magazine shoot. My father offered a quiet smile. Lily sat slouched in her seat, her eyes flicking between her phone and the ceiling like she was anywhere but here. I took a deep breath, trying to believe, just for tonight, that maybe things would be different. I was wrong. I had just lifted my glass to offer a simple thank you when the clear clink of glass on glass echoed across the room. My mother stood, tapping the edge of her wine glass with a practiced elegance. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. And I knew, just by the way she inhaled, that this night wasn't going to stay about love. It was about to become something else entirely. First, my mother began, her lips curved into a practiced smile while her eyes held that familiar chill. A warm congratulations to Rachel and Ethan. May your marriage be full of love and endurance. There was a smattering of polite clapping. I smiled stiffly, but something inside me jolted at her choice of words. Endurance. Not joy. Not growth. It didn't sound like a blessing. It felt like a warning wrapped in lace. She raised her glass with theatrical poise. And since this is such a momentous occasion, Dennis and I wanted to share some family news. We've decided to reallocate the $40,000 wedding fund originally set aside for Rachel to Lily. She's engaged now too, and her circumstances are less fortunate. The room stopped. Chairs creaked. Forks froze midair. Someone let out an awkward laugh, thinking surely this was some twisted toast setup. But I knew better. My mother never played games with money. I stood there blinking, as if I could somehow rewind the last 10 seconds. That money, I said slowly, was transferred to me when I turned 18. I used part of it for college. The rest I've saved, budgeted, and planned around for this wedding. Every detail. She placed her glass down as if we were discussing tablecloths, not betrayal. Rachel, you're already well off. You have a career, a stable partner, a house. Lily doesn't. She's trying to start over. The right thing to do would be to help her. Frankly, I'm surprised you didn't offer. My pulse thundered in my ears. That fund wasn't meant for redistribution. It was an agreement. A promise. Lily shot up from her chair, arms crossed. You always think you're better than me. You've had everything handed to you. And now you can't even share. No, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I've worked hard for everything I have. I've sacrificed, saved, planned. You don't need my money. You need to stop running from your mistakes. My mother's expression darkened. She stepped toward me slowly like she did when I misbehaved as a child. How dare you talk to your sister like that? She's not calculating like you. She doesn't hoard success and rub it in people's faces. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. I pulled away. I had to speak. This wedding wasn't designed to impress anyone. It was built with intention. I've earned the right to celebrate this milestone without being hijacked by family guilt. Lily burned through her own share of that fund on ventures no one vetted. That's not my responsibility. Then without warning, crack. The slap came so fast I barely registered it before the heat bloomed across my cheek. The entire room gasped. I staggered not from pain but from shock. No one moved. Lily's mouth hung open. Even my father, so used to silence, looked stricken. I straightened slowly. My voice shook but I held firm. You don't get to hit me because I refused to bankroll someone else's failure. A rustle by the bar broke the stillness. I heard a hushed voice. Then the words. Yes, I need to report an assault. A woman just slapped her daughter. Public restaurant. Witnesses present. My mother spun around. Who said that? A young waiter stepped forward. His hands trembled slightly but his voice was clear. I did. And I'll testify. Ethan stepped forward, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Solid, steady. We're not just going to let this go, he whispered near my ear. Not this time. Within minutes, the soft clatter of silverware was replaced by flashing red and blue lights bleeding through the restaurant windows. 2 officers entered, calm but alert. They spoke briefly with the manager, then made their way to our table, cutting through the sea of hushed onlookers. One of them, a woman in uniform with a measured, kind tone, turned to me. Ms. Rachel Whitman, would you like to file a formal report for what just occurred? I straightened in my seat, the sting on my face still fresh but my voice firm. Yes, I would. My mother, who had already turned to leave, halted mid-step as the officer stepped in her path. Ma'am Carol Whitman, I'm going to need you to come with us. You're being detained for assault. The room filled with whispers, gasps, and eyes avoiding mine. Lily sprang from her seat and rushed after our mother. You're heartless, she screamed at me. You'd destroy your own family over a slap? I looked at her, but said nothing. I was done explaining myself. And I wasn't stepping back this time. That night I didn't sleep. My cheek throbbed, sure, but it was deeper than that. Something had cracked wide open. A fracture inside me that no amount of pretending or peacemaking could fix anymore. The next morning, I visited the office of Clara Jennings, a seasoned attorney Ethan had recommended. She was in her early 40s with warm brown eyes, crisp attire, and an energy that didn't waver. After I explained everything, years of favoritism, financial gaslighting, the public humiliation, she leaned forward. You were right not to stay silent, she said. Let's hold them accountable. That very afternoon, we filed an assault suit. Multiple staff members from the restaurant volunteered statements, and the incident had been captured on the restaurant's surveillance cameras from 2 angles. 3 weeks later, Carol Whitman appeared in court. I sat quietly at the plaintiff's bench beside Clara. Ethan never let go of my hand. When the judge asked my mother to rise, she did so without glancing at me. Her lawyer claimed it was simply a heated moment, during a family misunderstanding, not worthy of legal punishment. Then the footage played. The crystalline audio. The silence that followed the slap. the visible horror on guests' faces. It said more than any testimony ever could. The judge spoke clearly. Public assault is not excused by family connection. My mother was fined $2,000, sentenced to 6 months probation, and ordered to complete an 8-week anger management course. No jail time, as it was her first offense. But she was legally barred from contacting me for the duration of her probation. I didn't feel triumphant. But I did feel free. I had drawn a boundary no one could erase. But I was wrong to think it was over. 2 weeks later, I received a heavy envelope in the mail. The sender, Whitman and Law Office, a name I recognized. My father used to work there. Inside? A civil lawsuit. My parents were suing me. They claimed the $40,000 wedding fund had been set aside strictly for education and that I had misappropriated it. I stood there holding the papers, stunned into a hollow kind of laugh. Not out of amusement, just disbelief. I picked up my phone and called Clara. "You're not going to believe this," I said, voice tight. "They're suing me now." She didn't miss a beat. "Then we'll prove it was legally yours." And we would. Because this time I had more than a voice. I had the law and the truth on my side. "They're really taking you to court," Clara said, shaking her head, "all because they can't control your money anymore. But don't worry, this is a pressure tactic, not a case." And that's exactly what the next few months became. Every preliminary hearing felt like a staged performance. My parents arrived early, dressed in somber tones like they were attending a funeral rather than a courtroom. Lily always trailed behind them, head high, outfits bold and impractical, casting smug little glances at me from across the aisle. She never spoke, but her eyes were loud, always playing the wounded daughter, the overlooked child. At one hearing, their attorney tried a dramatic angle, claiming the original intent of the custodial account was solely for college expenses, not for extravagant ceremonies or lavish displays. Clara rose calmly, unshaken, and handed the court a meticulously organized binder. "Your Honor," she said with clarity, "here are the bank records, the custodial transfer documents, and written confirmation from the financial institution dated 7 years ago. This account was not a conditional trust. It was an unrestricted gift." Ms. Whitman became the sole legal owner at age 18. She turned to the judge, steady and deliberate. "The plaintiffs are not trying to uphold a legal agreement. They're trying to undo a gift because they disapprove of how it was spent." The courtroom fell into a silence so deep I could hear the soft whir of the ceiling fan overhead. I glanced at my father. He stared at the floor, his expression worn, his jaw tight. My mother? Still as stone. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't about the law. This was punishment for disobedience. For independence. For daring to step out of line. And Lily? She still believed she was owed the life I built. Ethan reached for my hand. I didn't let go. I was ready for every chapter of this war. But even I didn't anticipate the next move. A few weeks later, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, Ethan and I were reviewing final vendor lists for the wedding when my phone rang. The screen flashed with my cousin Melissa's name. Her voice was soft. Uneasy. "Rachel, are you okay?" My heart dipped. Why wouldn't I be? "Well, my mom heard from your mom that you and Ethan broke off the engagement." I froze. "What?" "She said Ethan caught you with someone else. That the wedding's canceled." I stood up so fast my chair scraped the tile. Within half an hour, I got 3 more calls, 2 from old college friends, 1 from an aunt I hadn't spoken to in months. Concerned voices. Confused messages. And then it got worse. A friend forwarded a screenshot of an email that looked identical to my personal address. The subject line read, "Wedding cancellation, Rachel Whitman and Ethan Marshall." The message was formal. Detached. It claimed the event was canceled due to personal indiscretions and ended with, "We apologize for any inconvenience." My stomach twisted. I checked my actual email. Nothing in sent. No drafts. No alerts. But someone had created a fake email to impersonate me and sabotage my name. I knew immediately who it was. Only one person had that mix of entitlement and cruelty. Lily. When Ethan returned from the store, I wordlessly handed him my phone. He scrolled through the screenshots and texts. His face hardened. "They're trying to destroy you," he said. "We need to fight back." I nodded, jaw set. I'm done letting them chip away at my life. And I meant it. But I didn't expect what came next to be worse. The very next morning, Ethan got a message from an unknown number. No words, just 4 images. They showed me, or at least someone with my face, in a series of overly intimate poses at a cafe with a man I didn't recognize. My face was awkwardly pasted onto another woman's body. The skin tones didn't match. The shadows bent in directions that made no sense. One hand had 6 fingers. And the expression on my face looked like it had been yanked from an old work ID photo. Beneath the final image, a caption. Now you know the truth. She's been lying to you. She doesn't deserve you. Ethan stared at the screen, jaw tight, before silently handing me the phone. I scrolled through the images, then looked up at him. He didn't speak for a moment, and when he did, his voice was steady. They really think I'm that easy to fool? That I'd fall for this? I crumpled into his chest, sobbing not out of guilt, but because even after everything he still chose me. Chose truth. That afternoon we took immediate action. We contacted our attorney, Clara, and reported the defamation and harassment. We also retained a digital forensics investigator recommended by her firm. Within days, the trail led us to an IP address in Charlotte where Lily lived. While we didn't have her fingerprints, every clue pointed to her. Once again, when they couldn't win through court, they turned to what they knew best: gossip, sabotage, and spectacle. Ethan, calm as ever, drafted a heartfelt letter to our guests. In it, he clarified that the wedding was proceeding as planned, apologized for any confusion caused by false information, and expressed gratitude for their support. Most people responded with kindness. Some even admitted they had suspected the rumors weren't real. A few sent flowers. Others offered to help with last-minute prep. As for me, I was done feeling angry. At some point, exhaustion takes the place of rage. I had nothing left for hate. One evening, while we sat across from each other eating takeout in silence, Ethan looked up. "You think they'll stop?" he asked. I looked into his eyes, clear, quiet, and waiting. "No," I said softly. "But I don't think they can hurt me the same way anymore. Because the truth had become my armor. Because I wasn't trying to earn their love anymore. Because I finally believed I didn't need to explain myself to people determined not to hear me." That next morning, I woke up to something unfamiliar. Peace. No calls. No fake emails. No new slander floating through the air. Just the sound of birds outside the window, sunlight on the floor, and the soft scent of jasmine tea from the pot Ethan left on the nightstand. Then came Isabel's voice, muffled through the bridal suite door. "The bride ready yet?" I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. Whole. I stood and opened the curtain. The garden below was bathed in morning gold. Rows of white chairs curved gently around the aisle. A wooden arch wrapped in lavender and ivy stood waiting under the cottonwood tree. Simple. Pure. Us? We'd hired 2 discreet security guards. One was stationed at the front entrance, checking names against our list. The other patrolled the rear and the service path. It might have seemed dramatic, but we weren't leaving anything to chance. 3 days earlier, Ethan and I had sent a formal notice to my family. "You are not welcome. Any attempt to attend will be considered trespassing." Because this time I wasn't letting chaos steal my peace. Not today. Not ever again. Carol, Dennis, and Lily Whitman were not permitted to attend the wedding for the emotional safety and peace of the bride. Our letter had been direct, respectful, and final. There was no response. No protest. No apology. The ceremony began at 2 o'clock sharp beneath a cloudless sky. One by one, our guests arrived, close friends, chosen family, and the kind of people who didn't need reminders about kindness. They were delighted by how serene and secluded the olive grove felt. There was no mention of drama. No curious glances or hesitant whispers. Only the low hum of a single guitar and a breeze that teased the lavender ribbons tied to each white chair. Every hug, every toast, every teary-eyed blessing felt sincere. In the bridal suite, I stood by the mirror adjusting my veil when there was a soft knock at the door. One of the security guards, Mark, stepped in speaking low. "Ms. Whitman," he said gently, "we've just detained a woman behind the parking area. She attempted to scale the fence near the service path. She matches the photo you provided." My chest tightened. "Lily?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. She had a backpack on her. We checked it for safety. Inside were 3 open bottles of strong perfume, a can of black spray paint, and crafting scissors. When we asked her intentions, she said she came to fix a few things. My hands gripped the chair back. I wanted to go outside. To look her in the eye and ask, "What exactly were you going to fix? My bouquet? My dress? The aisle I built with love?" But I didn't go. I simply looked at Mark and said, "Please walk her off the property. Don't call the police. But she cannot come back. Not under any circumstance." He nodded. "Understood. We'll handle it quietly." I sat down, hand on my chest. feeling the thunder of my heartbeat, not from fear but sorrow. Isabel entered a moment later and saw my expression. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Lily just tried to crash the ceremony," I murmured. "She brought scissors and spray paint." Isabel didn't flinch. She just took my hand in both of hers and gave it a steady squeeze. "Then this proves how right you were to protect yourself. But today is still yours. No one gets to take that from you." When the music began, and I stepped out with my uncle, my late mother's brother, who had graciously offered to walk me down the aisle, I felt nothing but presence. The faces I passed were filled with love, not judgment. And then I saw Ethan. He stood under the floral arch, sunlight catching the edges of his hair, his eyes locked on mine with a quiet joy I'll never forget. He didn't need to say a word. I knew he saw every step I'd taken to get there. Every battle fought. Every boundary drawn. The ceremony unfolded like a soft breath. We spoke our vows clearly. When the officiant finally said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the garden filled with applause. No one asked about the ones who weren't there. They didn't matter anymore. Afterward, we didn't travel far. We spent a week tucked away at a lakeside cabin near Heron Lake, where the pine trees whispered stories and cell signals couldn't reach us. We called it our rumor-free week. No fake accounts. No prying eyes. No drama. Just peace. When we returned to Santa Fe, we used the rest of my wedding fund to make a down payment on a cozy 2-bedroom adobe home in Canyon Road, 15 minutes from the plaza. It wasn't just a house. It was a beginning, finally, one I had written for myself. It wasn't grand or architecturally stunning, but our little adobe home on Canyon Road glowed with warmth. Sunlight pooled across the wooden floors in the morning, and the balcony, barely wide enough for 2 lavender planters and a small cedar coffee table, was just right for us. Our first real home. Not just mine. Ours. I hung our wedding photos along the hallway. I took Ethan's handwritten vows and placed them in a rustic oak frame, which I mounted just above the bed. On weekends, we painted the living room a soft sand color, built shelves from reclaimed wood, and had the occasional debate over whether the clock was straight or artistically slanted. It wasn't perfect. It was real. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. One warm afternoon in early June, I was browsing fabric swatches for new curtains when my cousin Elise called. "Did you hear the news?" she asked. Her voice carried that tone, hesitant but loaded. I braced. "What news?" "Lily's getting married next month. Big production. Charlotte. Your parents are funding it. Took out a bank loan," I heard. "Of course." I closed my eyes, letting her words drift over me. "The Lexington Grand Ballroom," Elise added. "Imported peonies, string quartet, 6-course meal, the whole thing." I didn't respond. And get this, they hired a PR consultant to restore Lily's reputation. You know, after everything. This time, I actually chuckled. Not out of cruelty. Just detachment. "Did you get an invite?" she asked. "No," I said simply. "But even if I had, I wouldn't go." Elise sighed. 10 relatives already declined. A few told your parents directly that they didn't want to attend a wedding planned by people who tried to tear their own daughter apart. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. That moment marked something in me. From then on, I stopped checking. No more curiosity. No silent monitoring. I didn't block anyone. I didn't delete numbers. I didn't move or hide. But I didn't open any doors either. I had finally learned that forgiveness was mine to give, but trust was theirs to earn. And trust, once broken, doesn't get patched with silence. It needs action. It needs truth. And it's not something I owed anyone just because we shared blood. That Thanksgiving, Ethan and I hosted a small dinner at our home. Isabel brought a bottle of red from a vineyard near Taos. Elise arrived with her signature pumpkin pie. And Uncle Grant, the man who had walked me down the aisle, carried a wooden box, smooth and hand-carved, with the words etched on top. "Family isn't here born to. It's who shows up." I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a laminated copy of our marriage certificate, a photo of the 3 of us from the wedding, and a note in Grant's handwriting, "We're proud of you." I cried because it was real. I didn't need a packed ballroom. I didn't need validation from people who only knew how to shame. I needed this. Later, while Ethan and I were repainting the front door a gentle sage, he asked quietly, "Do you think things might ever get better with your family?" I looked at him, no flinch, no bitterness, just truth. "Maybe, but if it does, it won't be because I waited. It'll be because they changed. And if they don't," I smiled faintly, "I'll still be okay." And I meant it. Because when I left the wreckage behind, I didn't just walk away with Ethan. I walked away with myself. My peace. My future. And a home full of light I built on my own terms. I didn't just walk away with a house or a ring, I walked away with a stronger version of myself. Clearer. Grounded. No longer willing to trade my peace for a seat at a table that only ever served guilt. I had learned how to set limits without apology, how to close a door without explanation, and most importantly, how to love myself without waiting for approval from people who saw affection as leverage. The sky outside had dimmed to a dusky purple, and a soft rain tapped rhythmically on the roof of our quiet little home. I sat curled by the window, a mug of hot cocoa warming my hands, following the streaks of water as they danced down the glass. From the kitchen, I heard Ethan humming something familiar, probably an old tune he played during road trips. The scent of cinnamon and butter filled the air. He was making waffles again. As the moment stretched out, so did my thoughts, stretching across everything the past year had thrown at me. That slap that stung more for what it symbolized than how it hurt. The lies. The rumors. The manufactured chaos meant to wear me down. They hadn't won. Because when I stood in that courtroom, I wasn't just protecting my finances, I was protecting something even more sacred. My boundaries, my voice, my dignity. There was a time I believed that family meant sacrifice. That to be a daughter was to stay silent, to keep peace at your own expense, to call cruelty love if it came from blood. But now? I knew better. Ethan brought over a tray and set it gently on the table. He didn't speak. He just took my hand with that same quiet steadiness that had seen me through every trial. I looked up and finally said what I'd been holding in. You know, I used to think that money was just for a wedding. He tilted his head, listening. But it wasn't. It was a test, I continued. A fork in the road. A choice between living to please people who would never see me or living with integrity. That $40,000 wasn't just a fund. It was a symbol. A leash disguised as a gift. A tool of control dressed up as support. And when I fought for it in court, not for the cash, but for what it represented, I broke a generational pattern. The myth that the eldest daughter must always fold. Always yield. Always forgive first, regardless of harm. I didn't win because I got married, I said quietly. I won because I refused to keep surrendering to emotional debt passed down as duty. If this story is resonating with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. There's more ahead, and trust me, what happens next will stay with you. Let's keep going. Ethan just nodded. He understood without needing every detail. Because real family doesn't punish your boundaries. It celebrates them. Real love isn't conditional. It doesn't silence you with guilt or accuse you of being dramatic when you finally speak your truth. I had lost things: the shared holidays, familiar routines, the illusion of family harmony. But I had gained so much more: mental clarity, emotional safety, and a life built not on obligation, but on mutual respect. Someone once asked me if I would forgive them, my parents, Lily, if they ever reached out. I thought about it for a long time. And the answer is yes. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the fire. It means walking forward lighter. If they ever truly changed, the door could open. But I would never reach for the handle again if I sensed the same storm waiting on the other side. One late summer morning, I wandered through the Santa Fe Farmers Market, weaving between baskets of fresh herbs and colorful woven rugs. An elderly woman sold bundles of lavender, each wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. A small handwritten sign sat beside them. Love is freedom, not a leash. I bought one not for the smell, but for the truth. It felt like a message sent backward in time, to the version of me who once thought love required self-erasure. I had survived storms, lies, courtrooms, and late-night phone calls. And now? I sat here in my home whole, calm, and finally free. Not because I was lucky. Funny how people say that when they don't see the cost. I didn't stumble into peace, I fought for it. I chose the harder path, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And if you're someone reading this who's caught in a family full of cracks too jagged to smooth over, I want you to know this. Setting boundaries is not betrayal. Choosing your mental health doesn't make you cruel. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you're ungrateful. You don't need anyone's permission to value your voice. My story isn't just about me, it's a reflection of anyone who's ever been told to just keep the peace while swallowing their pain. It's for the eldest daughters asked to carry too much. The ones told love means tolerance, even when it hurts. But real love doesn't ask for your silence. It honors your truth. And sometimes healing begins the day you finally say, no more. Rachel's journey is a reminder, you don't owe loyalty to dysfunction. Blood may connect us, but it's respect that makes a family. So what about you? Would you have made the same choice in Rachel's shoes? Or would you have waited for things to change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story spoke to you, make sure to subscribe for more emotional, real-life stories about boundaries, healing, and reclaiming your voice. Because your peace is worth protecting. Always. Thanks for listening.